Hey everybody, welcome to the SWICTech Leading Business Podcast. This is episode number 18 and today is February 4th. Wow, it's already February.
Scary. I don't understand it.
I'm your host, Eric, and
I'm Shane.
All right. So today, our topic of discussion is going to be NIST and CMMC, which stands for Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification. It's a bit of a mouthful. But before we get into that topic, we wanted to just go through our introductory stuff and talk about some of the new technologies that Shane and I are using. You should go first.
Okay, sounds good. And I think, Eric, this is going to be our last podcast of season 2, so to speak, right? We'll be kind of kicking off a new cycle next year. Maybe we'll mix it up a little bit here. We'll see. But new tech that I am using. I got an M1 MacBook Pro. So the new M1 means like the chip infrastructure that Apple is building themselves. They said, see you later, Intel, which is pretty crazy, pretty big deal. The tech world, so to speak, is on, I guess the nerds, the Apple nerds, right? Not SWICTech necessarily, but the Apple nerds are on fire these days about how revolutionary it is that they're changing this up. And then people got their hands on these new computers and they were just crazy fast in comparison, and the hype went up like 100%. It was like, Apple was like, these are awesome. And everyone's like, it sounds awesome, but we'll see. And then they got the computers and they're like, this is more than awesome. Like Apple outdid themselves. And yeah, so I have one. I think you have one now too.
I have one too. The only complaint I have is the USB, like whatever that.
Dongle.
Yeah.
Which is not an M1 Mac problem. The dongles are just an Apple, well, they're an everything problem, right? My Surface sitting here has a USB port and a USB-C port, and that's it. So you always need a dock or a dongle or something, which is annoying. I do think Apple, at least the latest rumors are that Apple will be moving away from the dongles, and in their higher end, like MacBook Pros and stuff that they're coming out with, right, for creators and such down the road, the rumor is that they'll have more ports again.
Oh, that would be nice.
Apparently they have heard that everyone hates this situation.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we both have one. It's for personal use, right? I don't use that at SWICTech, but it has been amazing. I do light video editing. I wouldn't say I'm like a really elaborate video editor yet. And then Photoshop, a couple of other creative apps, and then mostly just your basic, web browsing, files, that sort of stuff. And I have no complaints. It's been phenomenal. The speed is unreal. The battery life is unreal. Everything.
The battery life is completely unreal. I'm like, it's been 3 days. When's it ever gonna die? It's not even close.
Right.
Awesome. And still doing a lot of like intensive things on it. It can handle it. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
The other really interesting thing with that is, so Apple built a tool called Rosetta, which is like software that's running on those Macs to help them run old applications that developers haven't optimized for those Macs yet. And those old applications designed for Intel Macs are running better on the M1 Macs than they are on the actual computers they were designed for. So it's going to be really cool to see once we kind of get to a place where this is the new normal, just how much better they can be. And Windows seems to be kind of following in their footsteps. They just released, so the concept, the chip concept, and I'll stop rambling here in a second, but the chip concept that they have is called ARM, and it means that the whole system is like on its own chip or whatever. It's all built in together, and it was designed for like phones, right? So people, when it first came out, were like, that's never going to work for computers, and that's fine. And now it's working better on computers than the original architecture for computers. And so Windows released a Surface Pro 10 that's on ARM, and it's even better. So it's cool to see where that technology is going. They always say that technology expands like exponentially, right? And it gets exponentially faster and better and smarter and whatnot. But you don't usually see this kind of leap in that space. Sure, you can look back 10 years and be like, oh, remember the first iPhone? Wow, that was crazy. But you don't really tend to see it this drastic.
Yeah, it is a big one because there's no fan. You know what I mean? Like I can hear the fan on the computer I'm recording on right now, but on the Mac there isn't one. It's quiet and it doesn't overheat, and it's doing more than So it's just, you're right, that is a big leap.
For sure.
It's cool. I'm using a program that I've been using for a while, Restream.io, and I know you love the .io extensions.
I do
Um,
not. I'm not a fan.
it's a it's a
.io, .ai. They just seem so spammy and cheesy. I can't get over it.
IO is reputable, but it's a great platform if you want to stream content to multiple platforms simultaneously. And so if you're going to stream to Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, all these places, you can do it from one destination. Now, obviously, LinkedIn is a place where a lot of networking is happening. A lot of business professionals are there, so they have a live product now too. And the only way you can stream to LinkedIn is through one of these third parties, like StreamYard or Restream. Um, so you can stream to that destination endpoint too, and then it records your files for you and parks them in their cloud storage up to like 2 weeks, so you can have that content for anything else you're going to do. And it also has like video chat. So similar to how you and I are chatting, if I wanted to have someone else join us without having to have any sort of meeting link or anything like that, or like a password, I can just share that link with somebody and they can pop right in there. So it's like a really neat piece of technology that I'm learning more about. So it's a ton of fun to learn about.
Would you say Restream is like the best option out there, or is it just the one you're most familiar with so
The
far?
one I'm most familiar with, StreamYard, I think gets a lot of press also. I don't know what nuances might be different between the two, but I'm, a fan of Restream from, they have a live studio. So it replaces an older technology or software called OBS, which stands for Open Broadcast Software, which I was using beforehand. So I can make all these custom graphics, have a studio so I can, jump from screen to screen if I want to share a web browser versus someone's camera. You kind of get the studio feel. I think that's still probably a little more robust and far more custom, but Restream is starting to take a lot of those things and put it into something that's a little more like iPhone-esque in terms of usability.
Yeah, it seems so much simpler, and you still get a lot of the same like abilities and features.
So, and you could still pair it with OBS if you like had some more custom stuff, and you just put your stream key there. So it's a very neat space as more content goes towards video and more video becomes live. It's something that's worth looking into if that's something that you're doing.
Cool. Very cool.
So that's the new technology we're using, Macs and streaming software in our personal life. So that's neat. And really today's topic, though, we're talking about NIST and, like we had mentioned, the Cyber Maturity Model Certification, the CMMC. Um, there was a big announcement on November 30th of 2020 that said, I'm going to paraphrase here, I'm not going to say exactly what it said, but essentially that is now going to be something that's going to be audited. Whereas before, some of these standards for NIST and DFARS and FARS were not necessarily audited. They were best practices. You should be doing these things, et cetera. But now there's a lot in the works to actually license auditors. And then as a business, you have to pay to get those audits done, similar to, I think you had mentioned offline, like accounting and finance.
Yeah, where you pay to have like an audit of your money, your cash flow done and usually, I'm sure this will go there. Companies usually have some sort of internal auditors, right, that are reviewing everything. Hey, in case we get audited by the government or what have you, are we going to be okay? And then they have the external auditors that actually come in and say, hey, this is good, this is bad, you're doing it right, you're doing it wrong, you're up to standards, you're not. So seems like a very similar concept. I think I don't know that this is even like a technical term for it, but the term that's been thrown around a lot has been that there'll be some form of CMMC assessors that will be a third party entity, right? So the DoD eventually, not yet, I think in 2022 or 2023, is going to hand out licenses to these third parties that will then be official like assessors for the CMMC. Too many acronyms. And so then you'll have to engage with those third parties and have them come in. Obviously, you'll have to pay them some sort of, I don't know, fee or hourly rate or what have you, however they do that. And they'll come in and look at your environment and make sure you're compliant with where you need to be. And the interesting thing that this is like a maturity model, right? So for those that are familiar with that, that's like a sliding scale, right? There's different levels that you can be on this maturity model. And
There's
I don't,
prerequisites to that. Usually you don't get to the other level by you have to have everything on the bottom level met first before you can achieve the next and
yep.
so forth.
And I believe the folks who actually designed this CMMC concept for the Department of Defense have estimated right up front. We don't have the actual numbers yet of who's going to fall where on this scale, but their estimate is that 80% of the organizations that are even going to have to participate in this concept will only have to certify a level 1. Like that will be enough to make them
Yes,
compliant.
it's okay. You don't have to like go panic and freak out. And the goal of the announcement is too, is like to allow businesses and subcontractors and contractors of like the supply chain for the DoD, to the Department of Defense, the time to kind of get this stuff squared away. So, some businesses may already have a lot of these boxes kind of checked. There may be some validation involved in that, like you said, like the
I
audits
mean,
and kind
that's going to be the biggest thing, right? Is do I have these boxes checked or
of.
not? Is you should know that before you get to a point where you got to call someone in and pay them to figure it out. Because I would imagine, like most things, right, the more you know, probably the less it's going to cost you.
Yeah.
Whereas the less you know, you're going to have to pay that assessor more money to come in and figure everything out and fix it for you later, and it's going to be more detrimental. Similar to, right, like cybersecurity, right? Like the more you pay upfront to protect yourself and your organization and your data is probably more likely that you're going to have to pay less if you ever do get compromised or whatever, because there'll be safeguards in place to protect you. So interesting paradigm. It's really interesting to see again that similarity to the financial sector, right, where a lot of the accounting, what are the review standards, international standards board, whatever, IASB, all of those things usually come out with a new tax or audit or accounting code, and then they say, okay, you have to like meet this by 2025, right? They give you like this like leeway, this window to like learn this new concept and deal with it. So it's really interesting to see that transferring over to technology.
It's pretty cool. And, just to state like this CMMC isn't just for technology, although there is quite a big piece of the pie that's going to fall under technology. Things like, when someone walks into your building, how are you signing and logging that that person was there? What areas of the building do or don't they have access to? Are there cameras there? Are the doors locked? That's some of that touches technology, certainly. Some of it's archaic in various ways, but it still needs to be met. So there are ways that you can tighten some of those things up. But then as you talk about like the cybersecurity side of things, like what are the layers that you have in place? How secure is your network? Where are you storing data? Who's accessing it? Have they been through background checks? So there's personnel to this equation also. Yeah, there's a lot of little components. And so, it's something that we've put a lot of effort and energy into at SWCTech to be able to handle some of these requests. And I think we've had 3 or 4 requests already come in for this stuff that we're
Yeah,
helping
people are
businesses
aware of
with.
it and they're looking at it and figuring out, okay, what do we need to do? All of that stuff. So that's a good thing, right? You wanna get ahead of the game there in that
Yep.
sense.
What is it?
And
An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Is that did I get that right?
right? Sure, you're asking the wrong person, but I'll go with you there. It sounds good.
Yeah. And gosh, I don't. I mean, really, there's so some of the like in the seat that I sit in, I'm outside, right? Outside sales by and large. So I'm interfacing with people that we don't necessarily do business with yet. And so the inquiries that come in are like, hey, we need to maintain the government contracts that we have and have the ability to go get new ones. And if they don't meet the CMMC model by the time this all kind of comes to fruition, then they lose the accounts that they have and they don't have the ability to get more. So it can be a big deal. So it is a very serious, big change and undertaking. That November 30th announcement was a big announcement.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to add kind of a clarifying note about, what the government's trying to do here, or what the whole scope or point of this is the idea is that they're protecting CUI, which is controlled unclassified information. So my very basic understanding of what that is it's obviously it's not classified, right? So it's not like top secret sort of information, but it's information that the government generates or creates, right? That's out there in the public domain for whatever reason, consumption of the public or use for the Department of Defense, on and on. There's all kinds of different versions of that stuff, but um, to date, it's never been something that like anybody's been paying attention to. And you and I know, we deal with so many businesses all day, every day, that there's a lot of information that's just kind of by happenstance seems to be readily available to people because businesses aren't actively protecting it
Yeah,
and
they might
aren't
not
actively
even know
protecting
that
their
they
data.
should be, or the best way to protect it. So it's a good thing overall. It's not a bad thing, but it's going to be something that's taken far more seriously. And so I don't know. I did have some notes here. It might be worth mentioning some of these things. We talk about what it stands for. It's a cyber security maturity model certification, and it's a unifying standard for the implementation of cybersecurity across the defense industrial base, aka the DIB. It's a lot to cover. At a high level, the framework is a collection of processes, other frameworks, and inputs from existing cybersecurity standards such as NIST, FAR, and DFARS. We've heard of NIST quite a bit. NIST stands for the National Institute of Standards and Technology. It's a well-known governing body of IT, right?
Mm-hmm.
Seems to touch manufacturing the most. I'm looking to you to maybe ask.
Sure.
We're displaying the fact that
Uh,
we're just broaching this topic. We're just scratching the surface. But who does this apply to? From what I was researching and finding, for this particular episode, it's both prime contractors who engage directly with the DoD and to subcontractors who contract with those primes to provide fulfillment and the execution of those contracts. So some level of certification will be a requirement every contract beginning in 2026. I know you mentioned 2022. This is saying that the DoD has indicated that they intend to issue contract opportunities at all levels of the maturity model, meaning that there will be some number of requests issued that will require only a low level of certification. And I know you had called it out in the beginning that, hey, you might only need to meet level 1. So not everyone's going to be at this, level 4 or whatever it's going to end up being.
yeah,
But
so my
depending on the
understanding,
degrees of what you're doing, you're going to have some higher levels of certification.
yep, and my understanding of those like date windows and stuff is that the 2022, 2023 category is like for the licensing for an assessor to be able to officially tell you you are, CMM certified to level 3. So businesses are going to want to know and have that information, right? They want that official certification before 2026 because that's when the DoD is going to officially say, okay, we're only handing out new business, new contracts to businesses that prove that they are a certain level. And again, to your point, doesn't necessarily have to be that they're a high level. They just have to be officially certified and in the system as saying they're at this CMMC level, so they can accept these types of contracts and this type of work.
That's cool. Good explanation there. Obviously, we talked a little bit about why it's important, but it's really, like you said, it's a mechanism to show verification to ensure that the appropriate levels of cybersecurity controls are put into place. Because a lot of these small businesses don't know how to do this. They don't know what the best practices are. So everyone's kind of flying by the seat of their pants. It's a bit of the wild, wild west, right?
Yeah, and I mean, on top of that, right, cybersecurity and just IT security in general is rapidly evolving and changing, right? It's crazy to think how far we have come from like, oh yeah, you need an antivirus on your computer and that's it. So so to think of like how fast that has evolved and changed, I feel like that's kind of what has put the DoD in this position to be like, okay, we need to like actually start officially making sure people are okay because not a lot of people know how to do that or know what they should be even looking for to do that.
Yeah, if this isn't a signal to show everything that we've been saying for so long and all of the quote unquote nerds have been yelling for so long that cybersecurity is bad. It's gotten bigger. We've said this for so long that it's big business now. It's not just some, like you said, some hacker in their basement where you got to get virus protection on your computer for. There's layers of security to have in place. And so the fact that the DoD seems to recognize this, see it, and understand it, and are now deploying this really should be a testament to show just how serious you ought to be taking it. Um, it's one of the reasons this is being implemented.
Yeah. And you mentioned the small businesses, don't always know what they're doing with this type of stuff. All that is true. The really good thing is it sounds like a lot of where this information and data is going to be stored and exist for small businesses, if they have the right systems and software in place, a lot of this will be covered already, or they'll be at the appropriate level that they
Yeah.
need to be. So some solutions that come to mind when we're talking about SWCTech, of course, are Microsoft 365, like Microsoft Azure Government, Windows 10, the latest, Windows operating systems, all of that stuff, because Microsoft built it and Microsoft does contracts and works with the government. Like a lot of that will already meet the requirements and will already be compliant. So the areas that small businesses are really going to have to focus is more on their in-house software applications and maybe their ERP solutions that they use if those are from smaller vendors and stuff like that. They're going to have to put some processes and solutions in place to protect them.
Mm-hmm. That's a great point. I'm looking at the notes here to see what else we wanted to cover. I'll probably chop this section out where I'm not sure what we're going to say next.
Or just, leave it in there because
45 minutes in,
that's what we do, Eric.
we're going to loft this. Yeah, to your point, though, like we have a service offering that mimicked the CMMC model. We called it it's a known standard. The CMMI is a known thing. It's a capability maturity model indicator. We've already put a cybersecurity package together that maps to that. So a lot of the folks that we do business with under some of our top tier agreements are mostly good. Like you had mentioned, they're on Windows 10. They're using Azure or Azure Gov in the cases where they need to be. Everything is backed up. We have all these things in place already that put these companies in a strong position to kind of start to check those boxes.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good place to be.
Yeah, hopefully. We'll see. It'll be interesting. Obviously our leadership and our technical staff are digging into this even more. And I think there's like some sort of 400-page manual that our CEO is reading through right now to make sure all of our ducks in a row. It's going to be interesting to see, because a lot of that is just pie in the sky right now, right? Like we said, this isn't real yet, or there at least aren't licensed people to certify you yet, and the government isn't basing any contracts off this yet. So it's going to be really interesting to see what disparities we end up running into, right? If there's, okay, we think we're good, we went through all this, we crossed our T's and dotted our I's for everything that we seem to understand in this manual or in the certification details, and then the assessors are going to come along and have official licenses, and what are they going to say? Are they going to say, oh yeah, it looks good, or are there going to be some discrepancies that people are going to have to shore up? So that will be definitely a unique challenge over the next few years as everyone figures this out.
Yeah, everything's always ever changing. These tectonic plates that we're on, these digital technological tectonic plates are ever changing. And one of the terms that stood out to me in kind of going through all this is like having a defense in depth kind of approach to things, really digging into how you're going to defend your company from these cyber attacks. So having the standard in place and having it being audited is ultimately a really good thing for everybody.
Sure.
It'll make the attackers and bad actors and hackers' jobs hopefully a lot harder, but it's an arms race. So, can we shore something up? They find a new way in. It's like, cat and mouse.
Always. It always will be, unfortunately.
Yep. Well, we do have some webinars coming up. 2 of them, and one of them is right around the corner. And in fact, I think you're going to be leading on that one. It's the managed networking solutions that's being co-hosted with Fortinet. That's on February 17th at 2 o'clock. Is there anything more about that one that you have to share?
Yeah, I mean, speaking of security, right, and protecting your business and your data, that's what the whole point of those networking solutions are, right? Fortinet offers a firewall called a FortiGate, and so we want to just dig in and unpack that a little bit with Fortinet, right? So they will be on the call with us talking through this stuff, and we just want to unpack the benefits of having an actual networking solution like Fortinet, or other, there's other big names out there, Cisco, Palo Alto, et cetera, that make true like edge security firewall devices rather than the cheapo modem and router you get from like your ISP, right, your internet service provider. So I'm excited to kind of help explain that to people. A lot of small businesses don't see the value in that, and I think it's super beneficial to them.
Cool. No, that's awesome. And then following up to that, about a month later on March 10th, we're doing Microsoft Teams for healthcare, and that'll be at 2 p.m. March 10th. Teams is something we're really comfortable and familiar with and highly versed in. There's different flavors. There's Teams for, teachers, there's teams for healthcare. So it's another kind of realm we're going to try to cover and call out some specific things that it does for healthcare.
I'm excited for that one. It'll be good.
It's going to be a good one. So yeah, that's what's on coming around the bend here with SWIC Tech. Thanks everybody for tuning in today. Have a great day.
Thanks, Eric. Good chatting with you.